Alright, welcome back to our fourth episode of TACTALK. I'm your host, Alden Morris. I am so sorry for these last couple days. I've not been able to post any type of show or podcast. I've been having serious, and I just figured out today, finally, microphone issues. For some reason, my microphone wasn't feeding back properly. It wasn't catching all the sounds that I needed. Well, I just got a lesson in technical equipment because I had to go through before I could even broadcast the show, since I'm doing this all as a one-man army. I had to figure out how to do it on my own. I had to go through all my sound settings. I had to figure out my microphone. I was this close to either taking it apart or throwing it away and trying to buy a new one. So now that I figured it out, I'm happy. I can move on. We can start our show. So again, this is episode 4, season 2 of our show TACTALK. I'm your host, Alden Morris, and in today's news, I've got some interesting information. For example, the Hearing Protection Act is back in Congress. So I'm going to go ahead and read you the article written here on January 8th, 2019 by Dirk D. Eagler. It's kind of funny because it sounds like it came from Boogie Nights. Alright, after it seems to have failed the first go-around, the HPA, or Hearing Protection Act, has been resubmitted to Congress. Let's hope this time it makes it through. According to the American Suppressor Association, on January 3rd, the first day of the 116th Congress, Representative Chuck Duncan introduced the Hearing Protection Act of 2019. An enhanced version of previous HPAs, this legislation includes several suppressor-related technical amendments that were first incorporated into the SHARE Act of 2017. The primary focus of this bill is to remove suppressors from the National Firearms Act, the NFA, making it easier for law-abiding hunters and sportsmen to protect their hearing while at the range or in the field. The Hearing Protection Act is a common-sense bill that is important to all sportsmen and women across the country, said Representative Duncan. Personally, I've experienced hearing damage from firearm noise. He has experienced hearing damage from firearm noise, and I believe easier access to suppressors may have prevented much of this damage from early on in my life. Bottom line, this bill aims to fix this health issue that has already been addressed by many other countries. Now it is time to ensure sportsmen and women can have the safety and protection they need while hunting and shooting. Originally introduced by Representative Matt Salmon in 2015, the Hearing Protection Act has garnered national attention for nearly 4 years. However, this year marks the first time that the HPA will be introduced into a Democratic-controlled House of Representatives. Regardless of who holds power in D.C., the American Suppressor Association believes that citizens should not have to pay a tax to protect their hearing while exercising their Second Amendment rights, said Knox Williams, president and executive director of the ASA. With anti-suppressor legislators now in control of the House, the path to passage of the HPA is now exponentially harder than it was before. It may take years, but we at the ASA, along with Representative Duncan and his tremendous staff, will not stop working until we get suppressors out of the NFA where they belong. Suppressors are one of the most misunderstood tools in existence. They have been federally regulated since the passage of the National Firearms Act of 1934. In order to purchase a suppressor, prospective buyers must live in a state where suppressors are legal, send in an application, including fingerprints and passport photos, to the ATF, pay $200 transfer tax, notify their local chief law enforcement officer, and finally wait. And that's the end of that article. So, yeah, and that's exactly how it works. If you want to buy a suppressor here in Washington State, you have to pay the $200 tax stamp, set up a gun trust in case you die, because the suppressor itself counts as another firearm. You have to set up some kind of trust. Either it goes to your children or the state can liquidate your shit, after you die, whatever. Usually when you buy a suppressor, they do it all right there for you. They set up a trust, they do your fingerprints, you do passport photos, you pay your $200 tax stamp. You pick out the product you want to purchase if you want to purchase it before you can get approved of it. And then you wait up to typically 9 months. And with what's been going on with Washington State and our Initiative 1639 and these enhanced background checks and all this crap, it's not likely in your best interest to go buy a suppressor under Washington State procedure. Because for all we know, since we're traveling backwards in freedom and the idea of our Constitution here in our Washington State, you may be criminalized for having a suppressor here very shortly if you have one legally obtained by the federal government, whatnot. But all in all, I've supported the SHUSH Act, I supported the HPA Act, I supported all these acts all this long. In fact, I think Trump's oldest son is one of the people who was a strong supporter of these bills, so we can get more political heads like that, people who have potential influence over large groups, to support bills like these, then it's much better. In fact, and the funny thing is, if you live in Europe, most countries in Europe, although they have very, very strict regulations when it comes to their firearms and sport shooting, it's still possible to shoot guns over there. And it's actually considered rude not to have suppressors on your firearms when you're shooting. So if you're at the outdoor range and you're shooting without a suppressor, you're actually considered that like the loud American and whatnot. So it's funny that we're so behind on our own constitutional freedoms that we've regulated, and we've repackaged your rights and sold them back to you as privileges, and it's just ridiculous how all that's working out. So we're gonna stop here for our first commercial break, and when we get back, we're gonna be talking about how I've made contacts with the owner of the Linwood gun store up in Linwood regarding how she's not gonna follow Initiative 1639, and her legal team is supporting her on that. And we'll talk about what Jay Inslee's up to in the news. So we'll be right back after commercial break. Thanks for listening. Bees Combat Systems at beescombatsystems.com. Protecting those who prepare. 801-987-0893 for custom body armor carriers and tactical gear for military, law enforcement, contractors, corporate security, responsible citizens, and border patrol. Bees Combat Systems at beescombatsystems.com. 801-987-0893. All right, we're back for our second half of episode 4, season 2. I'm your host, Alden Morris. So, like I said in the first half, the conclusion of our first half of the show here, I made contact these past couple days while dealing with some of the technical difficulties of this microphone here and some of the show requirements to keep this thing on the up above the ground, floating, I guess. We made contact with the owner. I believe her name was Tiffany. Don't quote me on that. She's had a couple different names, apparently. Some one of the articles named her Tree Still, and another one named her Tiffany. I've heard Stephanie. I've just asked to speak with the owner, and when I have spoke with her, we don't really exchange names. I just kind of tell her who I am, what I represent. I've given her all my information, so she's well aware of the show TACTALK. She's excited to be on. And it's actually really interesting because while I was speaking with her, I wanted to record right then and there. I had actually had all my, besides that my microphone was working properly, I had everything ready to go. She unfortunately was not able to ready to record at that moment, even though it only took about 5 minutes of her time. She was open to it, but she wanted to make sure she could do it right. And she told me she had some appointments there yesterday, that was going to affect her ability to be able to focus entirely on the show and to be able to answer the proper questions accordingly. Or the questions properly, whatever, I'm talking backwards. Anyways, long story short, she had to meet up with the legal team, because she's made an impact now. She's obviously made a great impact on the state, her and another shop out of Spokane, because how Washington State has put Initiative 1639, the legislation says that the first half of the bill goes into effect January 1st, 2019. Jay Inslee even proudly posted on his social media, which I'll bring that back up here in a second. But the first half of the bill goes January 1st, 2019, is 18 to 21-year-olds cannot legally purchase a firearm anymore. Well, the second half of the bill, and I say legally purchase a firearm, what it actually says is legally purchase an assault weapon. Now, what's an assault weapon, you ask? Well, that's not going to be legally defined until the second half of the bill kicks in here this late summer. So they've already age discriminated against certain people within an age, 18 to 21, to not be able to buy a product that has not been legally even termed yet or defined yet. So and that's what I love about these two shops that we're aware of right now. They're selling openly to 18 to 21-year-olds, quote-unquote, assault weapons, because they have not been given anything by the state legislator that shows a defined term for these products that they're supposedly not able to sell. So they're not breaking the law. In fact, their legal team has advised them to continue doing what they're doing, to continue selling, as if no bill or legislation has passed. And the best part is local law enforcement for almost all corners of the Washington state, except for Seattle primarily, excuse me, have openly voiced their opposition to Initiative 1639 and have openly voiced that they're not going to even enforce this bill. So take that, voters. We live in a republic, not a democracy. So it's not majority rule mob vote. It's about the individual citizen. So, and bring it back up the social media of Jay Inslee. What I love, and here we're coming up on about 2.5 minutes left of our second segment, so I'm going to try to end this one early since we just got all the technical difficulties working. But what I love is who comes out the woodwork when it comes to politics. And for example, like I follow Jay Inslee on my social media just because I have to. It's part of my job. I have to be aware of the political updates and the conundrums he comes up with and the crap. You know, I live in Washington State, and my governor affects me every day, so. Of course, I follow him. I don't follow him because I like him. I follow him because I like to. I'm a watchdog of his policies. I think he's a liar. I think he's one of the worst governors this state has ever had. I think he runs on emotional responses, and he has no real clue on how to fix anything. And he supports lobbyists, and he's paid out, and all that good stuff. Career politician. Anyways, on his social media, he bragged about how it's January 2nd. As of January 1st, 18, 21-year-olds can go off and die in war, but they can't have a gun. And looking up on the comments, I commented myself because I keep my Facebook, my social media pretty open. But, and of course, I've got my diehard supporters of the Second Amendment and the Constitution who called him out on his crap. And then I have friends who... if you're listening to the show, awesome, because I'd like you to come on the show. Let's battle out, let's debate your opinion here. I've had friends who are firearms owners who agree that 18 to 21-year-olds shouldn't have a firearm. Are you freaking kidding me? Give an inch to take a mile. Have you never heard of that? No. You guys who own firearms, who agree that 18 to 21-year-olds should not have a firearm, you are what's wrong with the society. That's a superior class type mentality. That's a superior type thinking. It's ridiculous and it's bullshit. So I need to knock that off because if you're 18, I was 18 at one point, and I agree. There are a lot of 18-year-olds out there that are freaking stupid. I was one of them. But you know what? As I was educated from a younger age enough to have firearms responsibility and not be stupid with a firearm when I was 18. I was stupid in other categories like girls and things like that. So let's get your heads out of your asses, please. If you are a firearms owner, here, do me two favors. One of two favors. Either shut your mouth and become a real firearms owner, a constitutionalist, someone who believes that no one's rights should be interfered with when it comes to their firearms, or turn in your firearms, because we see what side you're on. And if it comes down to it, your firearms will be confiscated because you're weak enough to not be there when someone else... Look at what's going on when it happened with the Jews. Who will speak for you when the time comes if you don't speak for them when their time comes? So, that's the end of our show. We got to move on. If you know who you are, I called you out. If you're listening to the show, come on the show. Let's debate out your opinion. So, thanks for listening, guys. You guys stay tuned on what's coming up next week. We're going to have the owner of that Linwood gun shop here on soon. And, yeah, thanks for listening, guys. You have a good night.